If Sukuna can open flames, can he manipulate his cursed energy to other properties like electricity and maybe even ice? Listen, Sukuna's been around a long time, like literally 1,000 years. And as a result of this, he's become like literally one of the greatest mysteries in Jujutsu Kaisen verse right now. We know who he is, but not really where he came from. We know he's strong. We don't really know how strong. And most importantly, we still have zero idea on what his motivations or plans actually are within the series of Jujutsu Kaisen. And as it stands right now, Sukuna is currently fighting Gojo, and we know Sukuna has at bare minimum 2 more techniques to use at his disposal. For some unknown reason, this man is just not using them at all. We know for a fact that he's got the 10 Shadows technique, and we know it's a technique that can rival a 6 Eyes Limitless user as stated by Gojo himself, and he's even got that unnamed Fire Arrow technique that he's got sat around right there. Further than this, I'm not personally convinced that he has other techniques that are based around the elements. Kyo Breeze actually recently made a video about this, and I highly recommend that you go check it out. But in this video, he brought up something I personally think is the most likely theory for Sukuna's powers, so I'll give you a brief summary. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel for massive PP energy. And if you want to support me even further, consider becoming a member to the channel for community game nights, movie nights in the Discord, early access to videos, VIP sections in the Discord, and much more. But Gege drew a manga called Box Number 9, and in that series, the main hero uses something similar to Sukuna by saying the words open, a box appears and drops out and a selection of weaponry ranging from knives, arrows, spears, hammers, and there's probably a hell of a lot more stored within that box right there. And I am a big believer in the theory that Gege is reusing this concept within this series for Sukuna. However, that wouldn't explain how we ended up with all these techniques and the weaponry. So let's use Yuta as an example. Yuki once said during her fight with Kenjaku that Kenjaku can't have that many more techniques because his brain would literally burst without an external storage like Yuta's, and this is referring to Eureka, who can store cursed energy for Yuta as well as cursed techniques that he's copied. And a couple of weeks ago, I put out a video theorizing on Sukuna's original technique, that it wasn't actually cleave and dismantle, it was actually soul swapping, and this was based off 2 things. Number 1, Gojo mentioned in one day how Yuji will inherit Sukuna's cursed technique, and then number 2, Yuji seemingly switching bodies with Kusakabe during their training. But when it comes down to it, I believe Sukuna is using this shrine that's been mentioned for external storage for his techniques. The 2 main theories are that his techniques are similar to the hero of Box Number 9, or the theory that his techniques are stored within the tattoos that he has. But the truth of the matter is, we genuinely don't know that much about Sukuna or his techniques without using headcanon or dipping into real life mythology for it. So we just have to wait and see what Gege has in store for us here. Now, as for why Sukuna hasn't used his curse techniques, I have 2 theories here. Number 1, Sukuna is a ridiculously proud creature. This dude wants to beat Gojo on his own, with his own technique, cleave and dismantle, and his own domain, and using any other technique for him would probably be considered a loss, a failure if so. And we've seen him do something similar before, like this man straight up refused to use his shrine technique against Yorozu and instead choosing to use Megami's 10 Shadows techniques. And when we really think about it, Megami watching from inside as Sukuna is literally murdering his sister's body here, I don't think it would have made a difference to Megami what Sukuna used to kill his sister. His sister is still being killed irregardless whether Sukuna used the shrine or the 10 Shadows. Megami would still witness his sister's demise. Then we have theory number 2. Right now, Sukuna's domain is still active, and it may just be the case that he can't use another innate technique while one is still active. For example, Gojo had to use a simple domain and couldn't use his limitless technique after his domain had been activated. Sukuna could be in the same boat right now. While his domain is still active, he may not actually be able to use the flames or the 10 Shadows technique during this time, and we've never seen Sukuna use either of these in conjunction with each other here. Even against the Maharaga, the domain had expired, and right after Sukuna uses his flame arrow. So it could be just the case that while one technique is active, he may not be able to dip into the others here. However, I will say I don't think the flame arrow would have much effect on Gojo once his infinity is back. We can only assume right now his infinity is back, considering he just fired off a reversal red, so I would assume that the limitless technique as a whole is now back, infinity included within that. But I see that flame arrow hitting Gojo in the exact same way Jogo's flames did. It's gonna look like it hit him, and then he's just gonna be stood there like this. You know, the flames are just gonna be surrounding him instead. But as Gege said, in the battle of the strongest, common sense really doesn't matter. Do you think domains are less of a focus in Jujutsu Kaisen going forward? I've said this a few times now, and I'll continue to preach and say this over and over again. When you have 2 extremely high level sorcerers fighting, I think their domains signaled the midway point in the fight right now. Anything after this, we are then starting to get into the meat and potatoes of the fight. And we saw this with Yuki and Kenjaku. Once Kenjaku got his domain out of the way, the real fight then began. We got to see all of the big things and the good stuff happen after the domain, after the fact. But when it comes down to the rest of the cast, I don't think so. I still think that they'll remain extremely prevalent. In Jujutsu Kaisen, domains are literally the Bankai of the series. It's the pinnacle of what the sorcerers can do, and there's still so many that we have yet to see. For example, we've got to see Yuta's domain. We still haven't seen that. As a Yuta fan, I really want to see that, and I still have no clue what that could even be. Then we also have the possibility of Yuji getting a domain, and honestly, I'm not really a big fan of that idea, but I do still think for sure they will be prevalent within the story, and they will still continue to be the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery regardless. Do you think it's possible Yuta ate Angel's arm? Honestly, no. I don't really subscribe to the theory at all. Yuta wasn't around when Angel lost her arm, and I can only assume that our arm is lost entirely for good now. And I also want to clarify, Yuta's copy abilities seem to be conditionless. We've had Kenjaku mention this, and we also saw Yuta copy many abilities in the Sendai colony without actually eating any body parts here. And I think a reason Rika ate Yuro's arm during that fight was because for her to fully regrow an arm with RCT, it would take a lot of cursed energy, and that's why he did it. It was a strategic move, I think. I don't think it was to do anything with the copying of the technique. We've seen him copy techniques prior to this without consuming body parts, so yeah, there's a little bit of cloudiness and fogginess around Yuta's whole technique right now, but I would probably go towards the ability of he needs to see the technique happen and then he can copy it. So I would say that that would be the condition to it. Well, that does lead us swiftly into our next question here. Will Yuta awaken in his fight with Kenjaku? And I think there is a strong possibility of Yuta going past his limits within that fight. We already saw Ryu talking to Yuta saying how you're approaching your limit, and I've seen what comes after this, you know, that once sorcerers pass the horizon here, and when and if that does happen, we already know Yuta has got a past with Geto, and during that fight in Jujutsu Kaisen 0, growth he had was absolutely insane. He was a novice at the time, and he was able to overwhelm a special grade sorcerer with many more years of experience on him. And before the Geto fans come in and tell me, oh, but half his spirits were split against his he's still lost. I don't care. Talk to the wall, kick sand. Anyway, so I think within their next fight, I could see Yuta actually genuinely turning it up a notch. However, I do see this fight going with Yuta and Kenjaku the exact same way I see the Gojo and Sukuna fight going right now. If these were fights and it was in the UFC fight card right now, I would have to say Gojo and Sukuna are the main event and Yuta and Kenjaku are the co-main, purely because I think of these two both fights coming really close and down to the wire. They're going to have to use everything against each other here. One, Gojo is a 6-eyes limitless user. Sukuna is the king of curses. Kenjaku is one cunning mastermind, and Yuta has the second most cursed energy plus a special grade demon sitting around with him. Yeah, it's going to be a close fight for Kenjaku here, I will say. But that is everything from me. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel for maximum PP growth. And if you want to support me further, consider becoming a member of the channel, again, for early access to videos, insider information, VIP Discord, community game nights, and Discord movie nights. It's definitely worth it, and it always helps me out. But as always, that is everything from me, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much love. Big kisses. Peace.